and then I'll send it to you.
Okay. So how did you find your responses otherwise?
I think they were fine. Like
Hmm.
I could come up with points within the time limit,
Hmm.
but then sometimes I stumbled upon like finding words and maybe like putting into proper sentences what I wanted to say,
Okay.
or like even I think I need to like use wider range of vocabulary
Hmm.
is to make it sound better. But yeah, that was the feedback I got from my speaking task.
Okay. That's good. So you know where you have to improve.
Yeah.
And as you practice more, you'll just get better at that.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So overall, did you find the integrated speaking doable?
Yes, ma'am.
No problem, no?
Yeah.
But it is pretty structured, so I
Mhm.
don't think there is any problem.
Yeah.
Okay, okay, Jay, when are you? Okay, it's not a question of when you want to, but this is like an instruction. Make sure you take your TOEFL exam in December itself, right? Why?
Yes.
Because if you need like a score improvement, you still have time. And anyway, I think you are applying this year, or no, you are in the 11th. Fine. Okay,
Next year.
now you are applying next year. Anyway, the thing is that since you are training for the TOEFL exam right now in this format, you should take your exam in December itself, because January onwards, to be precise, around I think 21st January is the exam date they have given. So 21st January onwards, all the exams that will come up will be in a new format, right? So it is better if you finish off right now. So like we will be finishing with sessions. Okay. Another thing, Swasti, Jay also, we have two writing tasks to complete. So today will be one writing task, Wednesday will be another.
Mm.
And after that, on the 14th, do you require another session for doubt solving and revision? Then I have to request for it because they haven't put it in the timetable as yet. Hmm?
None. I actually had a different doubt.
Hmm.
So when you said like a new format will
Yeah.
be proposed, like what will it be
Because
like?
the new format means they are revising the entire format of the TOEFL test. So the writing section, only one writing task will be same. Other than that, there will be a different reading task, different listening tasks. Like reading tasks, they will have passages, but not the same type. So they will not give you paragraphs and tell you which question belongs to which paragraph. And the speaking task will be different. So there will be no integrated speaking task. Everything will be, it is more like an, like the independent speaking task. They will give you, it will be interview format. So there'll be a set of questions given to you and you have to respond. Nobody is asking you, like sitting across the table and asking you, but it will be all like 45 seconds for each of the speaking tasks, 4 speaking tasks, 45 seconds for each question, and you have to respond. So it is like all on a personal opinion, etc., all those type of questions. And as for the writing task, also there will be one, the second writing task will be same. First writing task again will be different. So they will give you, say, it's pretty easy in fact, complete sentences, complete the paragraph, those sort of things will come up. And it will be another thing, it is an adaptive test. So like in the especially in the reading and listening sections, the first question will be given. How you answer the first question, that is how much you score in the first question, will decide whether you are going to get a higher level of test or a lower level of test. So that is,
It's basically gonna be like SAT.
yeah, it's basically going to be like SAT. But like I think the TOEFL test, the content that I saw, they are more or less adapting to easier format. It is a closer to the Duolingo format, a little different, but more or less they're getting closer to that. So they're basically making it easier for the Gen Z as I saw it. Okay, so what's the time? It's already 10 minutes. Nobody else has turned up. So we will begin, right? So now coming to the TOEFL writing. Now you have been writing essays in school, right? You've been writing comprehension answers also, right? So writing won't be difficult. Speaking was the only section which was something you haven't come across earlier.
Is there a
Right.
format to essay, or is it just like you write with it?
No, there's a format. So
Okay.
we have, I'll take you through the whole thing. I will give you the strategies, I'll give you the format, everything I'll give you. So don't worry. Yeah, you just have to pay attention. So when you are talking about the writing tasks, basically it is, of course, it is testing your ability to write, but more than that, your ability to comprehend and communicate, right? So the entire writing section is 30 minutes long, 2 essay tasks to write. They call it tasks, so we will stick to tasks. So 2 essay writing tasks. The first essay writing task is an integrated writing task where you read a passage. Like in the speaking section, you read a passage, and it's a longer passage than the speaking section. You listen to a lecture and you respond to a question. That is, you write an essay according to the question. And there is a second task, which is they call it an academic discussion. So it is basically a professor gives a question, say gives a few hints to the question. There are two students. So it's more like an online discussion. So two students responding to that question, and you would be responding to the question. You can take into account the points given by the students and add your own points. So it is like a discussion thread and you contribute to it. Basically, the format will be something like that. Okay, so now both of them you have to type out on a Word doc. You get a basic keyboard and you get no spell check or editing tools. Yeah, all you can do is you can edit, you can say delete, type, and you will get word count, right? So that's all you will get. So if you are going to depend upon your computer to check your spellings and correct them, that's not going to happen. Yeah, spelling, grammar, punctuation, typos, and you have to be very careful about typos because they take it very seriously. Punctuations also, whether you have used a period, you have used a comma where it is required. So grammar, sentence structure, All that you have learned in SAT will come handy here. So where to use commas, where to use say semicolons, colons, dashes, all those you can use here. Okay, so this is the final section. So we'll come to the details of the tasks. So as I said, the first task is an integrated writing task. You get 20 minutes to write. The academic discussion task, you get 10 minutes to write. Integrated task, you read, they are testing you on your reading, listening, and writing skills because you have to read, comprehend, listen, comprehend, and get all your points together and write, right? So you'll have a short passage. You will get about 3 minutes to read the entire passage, take your notes, right? Again here, taking your notes is very important. The audio clip will be around say 1.5 to 2 minutes long, and it will be on the same topic and similar points as in the passage. So it will be actually responding to the points made in the passage. So, and you have to write 150 to 225 words. So you don't write less than 150 words, don't write more than 225 words. So if you write around 200 words, that is safe enough, right? 200 to say 215 words. So basically, if you are responding properly to the question, your answer will inevitably be more than 200 words. Unless you just
And
pick up
how
the
will
points.
we, should we
Hmm?
like be counting the words, or how
You
will
will
we
get
like?
a word count.
Okay, okay.
You don't have to count the words. You will get the word count that you get in a Word document. Only what you will not get is the other editing tools, right? Okay, so here you have 20 minutes to plan and write your response. Yeah. So this 20 minute doesn't include the reading time and the listening time for the lecture. As for the academic discussion, here you will write a paragraph which is around say 100 words on a particular issue. So this is very similar to the independent speaking task that you had. So you get a topic, two people have already discussed on that topic, and you share your opinions on that topic. So here also the format will be more or less the same. You put forward 2 points, give your reasons and examples, right? Here you get 10 minutes for the entire task. So 10 minutes to read everything and write your response. So here you don't get extra time for reading. In 10 minutes, you read, write, and you have to write around 100 words, not less than 100 words. It could be about 100, 105, because that's and you won't really get more time than that, right? So about 100, 105 words, maximum 110 words you can go to. Okay, so now today we will be going into the details of the integrated writing task, that is task number 1. So this is just a recap of the format. You have an academic course content. It will not be a story. It will be a particular topic on anything. So it could be science related, it could be business related, economics, sociology, psychology, whatever. Market behavior. So you read, listen, and then you write 20 minutes, 150 to 225 words. Now, when you talk about the scoring criteria, the maximum scoring that you get is 5. So on a scale of 0 to 5, this will be a scale score. Both the tasks have a scale score of 0 to 5. Then they add it up and convert to a scale score of 30, right? So here again, there are parameters on which you will be scored. As in the speaking task, you had parameters. Here also you have parameters. So the first parameter is accurate development. So how you develop the topic, how you have taken your points. Organization. Organization is very important in any essay or any response. Even in your speaking task, organization was very important. So how you break up into paragraphs, how you deal with each point, use of language, yeah, your words and grammar both are important. And this is scored by 2 trained graders. So they will be following the TOEFL scoring rubrics, and they will be grading you. Now, more or less, the 2 graders will be giving you something at par with what you have done. Now, in case the 2 graders marks do not, scores do not tally, that is, one has given you maybe 3, other has given you 5, or one has given you 2, other has given you 4, then a third grader comes in and an average score of all of them is taken. Okay. Now we go into the details about what your response has to be like. Now, your response will be presenting the main points of the audio clip and the passage, and you have to show how they relate to each other. That is important, right? Similar to the, like, since you've already done the integrated speaking tasks, this shouldn't be very difficult. So you go on the same line. Now, what do you mean by accurate development? Select important information from the lecture, right? And present it in relation to the relevant information from the reading. So you have to correlate the points from the lecture and the reading for each point. Usually the passage has an introduction and 3 points. Whatever topic it is dealing with, the basic structure will be introduction plus 3 paragraphs, each dealing with one particular point. Now the passage will be dealing with those points and the same topic, either agreeing to it or disagreeing to it, right? Either like there will be points which the lecturer says that this is not true. In fact, this is what actually happened, that way. So when it comes to organization, you are going to write in paragraphs. So if there are 3 points, 3 paragraphs plus introduction, right? That's so basically you follow the paragraph structure that is given in the passage, right? So each point you have to deal with. Now, using transitions is important. Variation of your sentence structure is important. So you avoid redundancy. So you now when you are dealing with, like, the lecturer disagrees with the points raised in the passage. Now there are 3 points raised in the passage. You have to deal with each point separately, right? So that's where you have to have a vocabulary where you can use different words for disagree, right? I'll give you those also. So if you just remember, you just mug up 4 sets of words, like 4 sets of words for say countering the question and giving examples. So that's how you will avoid redundancy. Now, when you're talking about language use, sentence structure is important. It shouldn't be short sentence structures with like, which is not complex. And on the other hand, it shouldn't be like you are writing long sentences and they turn out to be run-off sentences, right? So using break in the sentences, using proper grammar and punctuations is important. Word choice is important, of course. Vocabulary, use of grammar should be strong and consistent. So now coming to the scoring, this is the TOEFL official scoring rubric. So if you are looking at a score of say 5, it says successfully. So this is what the examiners will be following. So they will be reading what you have written, then looking at this. Successfully selects important information from the lecture. That is the development part. Coherently and accurately presents information from both lecture and reading. It is well organized with few language errors, and then they will be looking for the say variation in sentence structure, the vocabulary used, transitions used, right? And if you look at a score of 4, it says generally good, not successfully selects. Yeah, generally good in selecting information from the lecture and reading, have minor omissions. So all important information may not have been put down. Minor omissions, inaccuracies, vagueness, or imprecision of some content. So maybe you that's why from the lecture taking the points is very important. So now you get 3 minutes to get your points from the passage, and that is more than enough. And besides, one thing good about the writing section is the passage appears again after the question. So while you are writing, the passage is in front of you, right? But still, you do take notes from the passage, because what happens is when you are writing, you don't want to waste time in reading again. Yeah. So this is what they are looking for. And more frequent and noticeable minor language errors. So that will get you to a lower score. And if you look at a score of 3, conveys only vague, global, unclear, somewhat imprecise information from the lecture and reading. Key points may be missing. Errors of usage of grammar may be more frequent and obscure meanings, right? So now you don't want to get a score of 3. That is out of question. We aim for a score of 5, right? So you have to be well organized. You have to get your notes done properly and structure your essay as they want it. Now, TOEFL is very particular about what they want. Yeah, it's not about how you want to write, but at least follow their structure, and it becomes easy for you also. So that's where the templates help. So if you're looking for scale score, what does it mean? Now we said that it will be on a scale score of maximum 30. So if you get about 5 in both, so a total score of 10, then you get a 30. Okay. They also have scoring, say you can get 3, you can get 4, you can get a 4.5, right? So it can amount to a 9.5 or 8.5 also. Say you got a 4 in one and 4.5 in the other, or you got a 5 in one and a 4.5 in the other, so you end up with 9.5. So 9.5 will scale up to 29, a 9 will scale up to 28, 8.5 will scale up to 27, 8 will scale up to 25. So this is the maximum or the minimum that you go to, right? So that's your aim. You have to come between 25 and 30. Less than that means your total TOEFL score goes down. Okay. And now in the SAT, you don't have any writing section, right? So when they are looking for your writing skills, apart from your essays, they will be looking at your TOEFL writing scores also. So if maybe your TOEFL writing score is very low, but your essays are very good, then they will put a question mark. Yeah, so you have to be like, okay, my essays have to be of good. So you are going to get help for your essays, and you are going to write your supplementary essays or the Common App essay very well. But here also the same level of writing capacity should be shown, right? That is one thing you have to keep in mind. Okay, so now coming to the task, we already said that you will get 20 minutes to write, plan and write 150 to 225 words you have to write. This you have to keep in mind. So it should, so you just keep in mind that you have to write around 200 words, right? So don't write less than 200 words, otherwise it will be very sketchy. And the maximum word limit is 225, you have to keep in mind. It shouldn't be lengthier than that. So you get 3 minutes to read. What you take down from, as always, from the reading, main ideas, key points, right? And the passage will appear on the screen again, as I told you. So if you maybe have missed out on something from the reading, the points are still there. But the lecture will not play again, right? You cannot go back to the lecture. So you have to take your points from the lecture. So lecture about 2 minutes, usually a different perspective from the passage, but it deals with the same points. So we will do some examples to get used to that. So the passage you hear, the lecture you hear only once. Now, what does a passage do? Yeah, the passage will give you a topic. It is, say, dealing with a topic and a particular perspective maybe, and it will give you 1, 2, and 3 points supporting that perspective, right? So first point, second point, third point. Now, when you come to the lecture, it may either say support the perspective or counter the perspective, and it will discuss each of these points. So both the reading and lecture will be about the same thing, but different perspectives. Yeah. So the viewpoints may be conflicting, and the lecture will also give you reasons and examples. The passage will give you reasons and examples. On one perspective, lecture will give you reasons and examples on another perspective. But it's dealing with the same thing. So from the reading passage, you obviously have to get to the main idea. That is, what is the topic? What is it all about? So that usually comes from the first paragraph. If you paraphrase the first paragraph, you get to the main idea. And the 3 points are important. Yeah. Each of the points corresponding arguments from the lecture you have to take down. So now the questions will be something like this. So any of the formats it can come up with. It could be like summarize the points made in the lecture, being sure to explain how they cast doubt on the specific points made in the reading passage. So this you know already from the lecture, it counters the points in the passage, right? Now your focus is on what? Focus is on the lecture. You introduce the points from the passage, and your, say, 25% of your writing is from the lecture, 25% from the reading, and 75% from the lecture. So you have to get all your points from the lecture, right? From the passage, you just mention the points and you go on to the lecture to give the details of how the lecturer cast doubts on each of the specific points. Okay. Or it could be like summarize the points made in the lecture, being sure to explain how they challenge specific claims or arguments made in the reading passage. Same thing. Summarize the points made in the lecture, being sure to specifically explain how they answer the problems raised in the reading passage, right? So it could be different formats. Or it could be summarize points made in the lecture, being sure to specifically explain how they support the explanations in the reading passage. So the lecture could either counter the points in the passage or support the points in the passage, or maybe explain the points that have been raised in the passage, right? So the most common formats that we have been getting till now are they cast doubt or challenge, or they may simply say, so if they are supporting, it could be strengthen, or they may simply say how the lecturer responds to the points made in the reading passage, right? So if they say response to, then you obviously know whether the lecturer is challenging or supporting. So this is what your question will be like. Okay. So first thing they will do is summarize. So you know you have to paraphrase and summarize the points, but you don't summarize the entire lecture and then go on to the reading. You have to present both side by side, right? So now when you are, now as always, we have to get to a strategy of how to answer these questions, right? So your essay should more or less summarize the main points from the lecture, and at the same time, they should describe how it contrasts or with or challenges the points in the reading passage. This is what you have to do. So you have to get your points from the reading passage, get your points from the lecture, and correlate them. That's all you have to do basically. So mostly you, and any examples that have been given in the passage or in the lecture, you use those examples, right? And again, you will write in your own words. Now there is a tendency when the passage appears on the screen, you may be tempted to use the exact words from the passage. Don't do that, right? Use the notes that you have taken and create your own sentences. So always paraphrase, write in your own words. And don't use direct speech. Always use indirect speech, right? Like the lecturer says that. And another thing, as in the integrated speaking, here also you will be using present tense, right? The author in the passage says this, author in the passage mentions, not mentioned. So never go into the past tense, always use the present tense when you are writing, right? And most important, you don't use your own opinion or your own points. So even if you know a lot about the particular topic that has been discussed, do not bring in your own points or your own opinion, right? You have to stick to the information from the lecture and the reading, and your task is to take the points from the passage, take the points from the lecture, analyze them, right? So, and now you have to write just about maximum 225 words. So, it is 4 short paragraphs. Now, in that, you will not be able to write every single detail. So, what do? You just pick up the main points. Yeah, like you did in integrated speaking. You just took the main points and responded. Okay. Now, as we saw in the questions, there could be 2 scenarios that can come up. Either the lecture contradicts or casts doubts on the key points of the reading passage, or and of course, when if the lecture contradicts or challenges the points in the reading passage, the lecturer will give examples. Uh, so we have to take down those examples of also. So your response should summarize the key points. This is important. Just keep this in mind. Summarize the key points in the lecture. Explain how these points relate to the points in the reading. right? Okay, let's look at an example. So even if it is a supporting, you have to do the same thing. So let's look at an example. So this is what your passage will look like. So 1, 2, 3, 4 paragraphs, right? So let's read this. So I will begin with the first paragraph and you people can help me in reading, right? Okay, so it says give yourself 3 minutes to read the passage. So while you are reading the passage, now right now you don't need to take down notes. We are just reading to figure out what it is like. So it begins with towards the end of his life, the Chevalier de Sengal, 1725 to 1798, wrote a long memoir recounting his life and adventures. The Chevalier was a somewhat controversial figure, but since he met many famous people, including kings and writers, his memoir has become valuable historical source about European society in the 18th century. However, some critics have raised doubts about the accuracy of the memoir, right? They claim that the Chevalier distorted or invented many events in the memoir to make his life seem more exciting and glamorous than it really was. So, from the introduction, what are the main points that you need to be you need to take down? First is that Chevalier wrote a memoir recounting his life and adventures. Yeah. Now he was somewhat famous but controversial also. Now, what we have here is that is critics raise doubts about the accuracy of the memoir. This is important. They claim that Chevalier distorted or invented many events. So, the main idea is so if you were to write a very short introduction, the main idea will be that the passage, maybe the lecture also deals with the same. Passage and lecture would be both dealing with what? The accuracy of Chevalier's memoir. That's it? Yeah. According to the critics, the Chevalier distorted or invented events, and maybe the lecture could be supporting or countering this. Okay, Swasti, can you read the next paragraph?
Yes, ma'am. For example, in his memoir, the Chevalier claimed that while living in Switzerland, he was very wealthy, and it is known that he spent a great deal of money there on parties and gambling. However, evidence has recently surfaced that the Chevalier borrowed considerable sums of money from a Swiss merchant. Critics thus argue that if the Chevalier had really been very rich, he would not have needed to borrow money.
Okay. So this is one doubt that the critics have, that it is Chevalier claims that he was very wealthy, but they have found that he borrowed money from a Swiss merchant. Yeah, this is a specific point. And so they argue that if he really was rich, he should not have needed to borrow money. Okay. So Jay, can you help us reading the next paragraph? Jay, are you there? Hello, Jay. Okay, Jay, if you're there, please come on with your audio and video. It's good. Okay, anyway, I'll read it. So critics are also skeptical about the accuracy of the conversations that the Chevalier records in the memoir between himself and the famous writer Voltaire. No one doubts that Chevalier and Voltaire met and conversed. However, critics complain that the memoir cannot possibly capture these conversations accurately because it was written many years after the conversations occurred. Critics point out that it is impossible to remember exact phrases from the extended conversations held many years earlier. So, this also we can just about summarize in one sentence, right? So, Swasti, if you had to summarize this in one sentence.
Critics doubt that the Chevalier would be able to remember conversations from such a long time ago, and although there is no doubt that Voltaire and the Chevalier have met and conversed, uh, it is doubtful that the conversation was captured accurately.
Okay. So now here, if we see, what are the main things that, like, uh, what do the critics think about the conversation? That is the main thing. So critics have doubt the accuracy of the conversation between Chevalier and Voltaire, right? Because the memoir was written many years after the conversations took place. And according to the critics, it is impossible to remember the exact phrases from some long conversations many years that happened many years ago. So that is the main point. The accuracy of the conversation that he has written in his memoir, because they had happened many years before he had actually written. Okay. Okay, now coming to the last paragraph. Do you want to read? I don't think Jay has come in as yet.
Sure, Mom.
Okay.
Critics have also questioned the memoir's account of the Chevalier's escape from a notorious prison in Venice, Italy. He claims to have escaped the Venetian prison by using a piece of metal to make a hole in the ceiling and climbing through the roof. Critics claim that while such a daring escape makes for enjoyable reading, it is more likely that the Chevalier's jailers were bribed to free him. They point out that the Chevalier had a number of politically well connected friends in Venice who could have offered a bribe.
So the main point here is what? That the critics doubt the story about doubt the claim of his escape from the prison, which is using a piece of metal to make a hole in the ceiling. In fact, according to them, he would have bribed the jailers because he had a number of politically well connected friends in Venice. Yeah. So if you see, the entire passage is structured in such a way that you get to the main points of each paragraph. So what do you expect from the lecture then?
Maybe there's like counter evidence that the Chevalier had actually done all these things.
Or actually done all these things. So the lecturer will be giving certain points or arguments with and supporting them with examples, right? Okay, now coming.
Now listen to part of a lecture on the top.
Okay, can you hear the lecture? You
Yes,
can?
ma'am.
I don't remember sharing the sound. If you can hear, then good. Then I don't have to stop sharing. Okay, Jay, are you there? I don't think Jay is there. Okay, anyway. So I'll just play the track and we'll see what the lecture looks like.
Topic you just read about.
No memoir can possibly be correct in every detail, but still, the Chevalier's memoir is pretty accurate overall and is, by and large, a reliable historical source. Let's look at the accuracy of the 3 episodes mentioned in the reading. First, the loan from the merchant. Well, that doesn't mean that the Chevalier was poor. Let me explain. We know that in Switzerland, the Chevalier spent huge amounts of money on parties and gambling, and he had wealth. But it was the kind of property you have to sell first to get money. So it usually took a few days to convert his assets into actual money. So when he ran out of cash, he had to borrow some while he was waiting for his money to arrive. But that's not being poor. Second, the conversations with Voltaire. The Chevalier states in his memoir that each night, immediately after conversing with Voltaire, he wrote down everything he could remember about that particular night's conversation. Evidently, the Chevalier kept his notes of these conversations for many years and referred to them when writing the memoir. Witnesses who lived with the Chevalier in his later life confirm that he regularly consulted notes and journals when composing the memoir. Third, the Chevalier's escape from the prison in Venice. Other prisoners in that prison had even more powerful friends than he did, and none of them were ever able to bribe their way to freedom. So bribery hardly seems likely in his case. The best evidence, though, comes from some old Venetian government documents. They indicate that soon after Chevalier escaped from the prison, the ceiling of his old prison room had to be repaired. Why would they need to repair a ceiling unless he had escaped exactly as he said he did?
Okay, so that was the lecture. So were you able to get your points from the lecture?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So, okay, can you just read out exactly what you have written? So the main terms should be there.
Okay.
So,
So at the top I've written, no memoir can't be like that accurate. Pretty Chevaliers is pretty accurate, semicolon reliable. Then I've written it in pointers. So
yeah.
number one, loan doesn't mean poor. I've written money, arrow, parties and gambling, not liquid assets. And then arrow, borrow money. Two is talk with Voltaire. And then arrow, wrote down everything, kept and referred to notes. People living with Chevalier confirmed. Number three, other prisoners had more power. Bribe not possible. And Chevalier Venetian documents, ceiling repaired.
Okay. So you got more or less everything. Okay. Now, in the first point, you said did not have liquid money. So the main thing was property.
Yes, ma'am. Like I wrote it in a way that I would understand. Like
Yeah.
he had to sell his assets if
Sell
he
assets. Yeah. So you've got the points, right? So
Yes,
you
ma'am.
got the points from the, so this is how you get your points from the passage and the lecture.
Okay.
So now coming to the question as they give you, so they will give you the directions. So you have 20 minutes to plan and respond. You will have to write 150 to 225 words and what you will be judged on. All those are given, and then they come to the question. So summarize the points made in the lecture, being sure to explain how they respond to the specific points made in the reading passage. Right? So this is your question. Now from the lecture, we are pretty sure that the lecturer countered the points made by the authors or the critics in the passage. Okay, so now how to deal with it. So this is how you take your notes, right? So even before the passage comes up, you are ready with the notes format, so you can refer to your notes while you are writing, right? So you can, the main points from the passage and corresponding points. So if you have a detail in the passage and you know it is going to be there in the passage when it comes up, you don't have to write that detail in the lecture, from the lecture, right? So like the lecturer said, he did spend a lot on parties and gambling. That's already there in the passage. So all you need to take down is he had assets, but he had to sell, took time, right? So that comes down over here. Similarly, point 2, point 3, you take down your notes from both sides. right? So this is from a different passage. So it's like science research, economic benefits, long-term survival, live on them, and then the corresponding ones. You can just go into it. So when you write in a tabular format, you know exactly. Okay, another thing, it may sometimes happen that the lecturer doesn't follow the exact order that is given in the passage. So you know, corresponding to which point the lecturer is talking, you can write your notes accordingly. So this already we have said, you have to take notes regarding the position or opinion of the author, main supporting reasons of the author, and so you usually have three main points always. These every passage will have three main points coming up. So three paragraphs, usually in like rare cases, it could be that there are two large paragraphs, otherwise there will always be three. So the article begins with the main statement, right? Followed by three paragraphs. Each gives a supporting point and the main statement, right? That was the structure we saw. Okay, now for the lecture, what did we see? It has the same pattern. Main points matching up with the main points in the reading, right? So it either supports or refutes the points made. Each of the points are either supported or refuted. And what the lecture gives you is, now there could be some information that is not related to the points in the reading, which we can ignore. We need points which are either supporting or refuting points in the article, right? So anything that is not really relevant, you can leave out. So you don't need to include it in your response also. So questions, we know what the questions will be like. Explain how they challenge specific points made in the reading or how they respond to. So in general, they will give you respond to. So if they are supporting, then you go with the support format. If they are challenging, you go with the challenge format. Yes, till then. Is there at all? Okay, now we come to the structure of the essay, right? Now, more or less, you have got an idea of how to structure the essay from what we read and heard, right? So, your first paragraph will be related to the main idea or the introduction, what it is all about. And you have three more paragraphs, each related to specific points, right? So when we look at the structure, you have to have smooth transitions. This is important. Moving from one point to the other and like navigating within the paragraphs, it should be a smooth transition. So you have to work on certain say vocabulary and transition words which will help in that. Now you have to address the relevant task in a concise fashion. This is important. Don't go into taking down all details or using exact words from the passage. We have to like more or less put down all the points in the from the passage in one or maximum two sentences, right? So you should have a coherent structure, articulately developed, correct in terms of the conventions of written English. Yeah, so you know what that is the grammar and language sentence structure that you are using. At least 4 paragraphs. Yeah, so the main that take care of the main points from the reading and the lecture. And always paraphrase. This is very important. Write in your own words. So when you are writing in your own words, you can make it concise. If you if you try to use the words and the sentences that are already given to you, you will end up writing more than is required, but it will be elaborate and you are saying the same thing in a more elaborate fashion. So make it concise. So always paraphrase. Okay, something you have to be very careful about. Spellings of the keywords. So especially words that are given in the passage like names or terms, make sure you don't spell them incorrectly, right? So that has a very bad impression. And always use the simple present tense. Okay. And of course, you have to work on the sentence variety, so and transition words. So now, what are the paragraphs that you are writing going to be? So you have an introduction and 3 body paragraphs, right? So introduction plus 1, 2, 3 relating to the 3 points. So introduction is what? A general statement about the relationship between the lecture and the passage, whether the lecture is supporting the passage or in agreement with the points raised in the passage or challenging the points raised in the passage. And you give the main point, what it is about. So the introduction basically will have 2 sentences. First sentence, what the topic is, and the second sentence, what the relationship between the reading and the lecture is. Now coming to the body paragraphs, your first body paragraph will be related to your first point. So paraphrase the professor's point, contrast and compare with the point in the reading, right? And whatever extra details or additional specific examples from the lecture should come in. Okay, so this is your first body paragraph related to your first point. Got this? I'll share the PPT. Don't worry, you can take your notes. So it will help you to respond as we go. Okay, then you come to the second paragraph, which will relate to the second point. Again, the same thing, paraphrase the point of the professor, contrast and compare with the reading, give all the extra details or examples that the professor has provided. And then we move on to the third paragraph, which relates to point number 3. Again, you do the same thing. Your structure remains the same. So paraphrase the professor's point, and while you are paraphrasing and contrasting and comparing, what you have to make sure is your like the vocabulary used is not repeated, right? That is one thing you have to work on. And then if you think you still have time and you can still use about 20 words more, you can write a conclusion, but conclusion as such is not required. So conclusion will be just restating the relationship. So it's like the professor thus successfully challenges the doubts of the critics in the passage that we read. Okay, so yeah, so as we said, there is not a conventional essay structure. We have to follow the format that TOEFL wants you to. Yeah, and concluding paragraph is also not required. So now we come to an essay template to help us get to a proper writing structure. So introduction should contain what? The main topic. So both the passage and the lecture are discussing about the same topic, right? So you just about 2 or 3 simple sentences, not more than that. So from the introduction that we had, say if you are looking at the introduction of the lecture, yeah. So in the introduction, the lecture said that Chevalier's memoirs are pretty accurate, right? And then she went on to, and it is quite a reliable resource in history for reference. So you begin with what? A topic sentence. What will the topic sentence do? Summarize the main point of the lecture. So it is basically from the lecture and the passage is the same. So you introduce the topic. Yeah. So the lecture and the passage discuss the accuracy of Chevalier's memoir. That's what they're doing, right? So you can begin with like according to the lecture or based on the lecture or the lecture states or believes that, or you can take the lecture talks about, just so on. And then you can go on to the author of the reading believes that, or you can say the lecture casts doubts on the claims made in the article, right? So first is what the topic is. Next, the reaction of the lecture. So the lecture casts doubts on the claims made in the article or supports the claims made in the article, whatever the case may be. So you can say refutes or challenges or casts doubts, any of those can be used. And then you can go on to another point, like the lecturer thinks that, now you can use he or she according to who the lecturer is, male or female. So whatever the voice is, according to that you can use he or she. She thinks that, so in this case you can say she thinks the lecturer casts doubts on the claims made by the critics in the passage about the accuracy of the memoir, and she thinks that the memoir is a rather reliable source of reference, right? That's it. Okay. So, or you can say that disagrees to the idea or belief, or the lecture challenges the point, however, by explaining the position that. So we keep it simple. Yeah. Okay. Now, if it is a case of agreement, lecture agrees with the author's notion of belief or idea stating that, or the lecture supports the idea or belief explaining that, right? If it is, if the lecture doesn't agree, then you can say cast doubts, challenges, refutes. Yeah. If the lecturer is agreeing, then agrees with the author's notion, supports the author's notion. Yeah. Now, after this, that was the introduction. 2 sentences, sentence 1 and sentence 2, introduction. So, introducing the topic that both lecture and the passage and lecture are dealing with, and whether the lecture agrees or challenges. Next, we come to the body paragraphs. So, body paragraphs will follow the paragraphs in the passage. Okay. Now, focus on one of the key points in the passage, explain where the lecturer refutes or supports the idea. This is what you have to do. How will you do that? So, first of all, you can begin with first of all to be clear. So, that makes it clear you are dealing with the first point. So, now it is always easier to begin with what the author has said, summarize what the author has said, and then go on to how the lecturer refutes it. So that way it becomes a little easier to keep keep your essay organized. So the first of all, the author points out that, right? So whatever the author has said, it is mentioned that, so the supporting detail comes in 2 sentences for what the author is saying. This point is challenged by the lecturer, or the lecturer refutes this point. She says whatever the point was. Yeah, you put in the details. And if there is an example, you can use an example. Or you can say, like, first of all, the author points out that, and then you can go on to give the details from the passage. Or you can say, on the other hand, the lecturer asserts or claims or suggests that, right? So when you say on the other hand, it shows that there is a contrast. So the contrasting terms should be there. However, on the other hand, those type of, or moreover, those terms have to be there. So the lecturer asserts, claims, or suggests that. So first is lecturer refutes, then what does the lecturer state, right? Furthermore, she argues, you get a supporting detail over here. So if we look at our points, so if you look at your points that you have written down, can you convert them into sentences? The first point.
Okay, so we could write the first one as, although the passage maintains that the Chevalier borrowed money from a Swiss merchant as being a sign of him as a sign of him being poor, the author refutes his point by stating that the Chevalier owned property that would have taken time to convert into money, and for the time being, he had borrowed the money. That.
Okay. So now the first mistake you did is, instead of the lecturer, you said author.
Oh, right.
Author will always be in relation to the passage.
Okay.
And this will be the lecturer or professor, whatever. You can say lecturer, you can say professor. Okay. Now, now you don't have to be so concise also. You can put in a few details that you have come across. Yeah. So okay. Now don't begin with although and. Now if you begin with although and continue, it will be one long sentence.
Yeah.
Right? Break it up into parts. So you keep the point from the author separately and then go on to the lecturer challenges this.
Okay.
Right? So first you just mention what the passage said. So you begin with, first of all, to, like, this is your first point. So you begin with, first of all, the author points out. So in the passage that we were dealing, it is not just the author, but the critics. So if it is specifics about something, then we use that specific. So the critics point out that Chevalier would not have been rich because, well, while he was in, where was it? In Italy, right? Or Switzerland?
Maybe Switzerland.
He was in Switzerland, yeah. While in Switzerland, he borrowed a large sum of money from Swiss merchants. So that's it. He wouldn't have been rich because he borrowed a large sum of money, right? So other details are not required, right? Then we come to the lecturer. Now, even if there are other details, the lecturer has already dealt with those details. So we can get those, if you want to mention those details, you can use it with what the lecturer said. So when we get to the lecturer, the lecturer challenges this point or refutes this point, we can say. Yeah, suppose we use challenges or counters this point. So the lecturer counters this point, stating that the Chevalier was rich and did spend a lot of money in gambling and partying, but he did not have liquid cash. Yeah.
Allowed if we use our own words like liquid.
You can use, or you can say, did not have liquid assets. He had property which he had to sell, and that took a few days to be converted to cash. In the meantime, he had to borrow to say, yeah, so in the meantime, he borrowed from the merchant, which does not prove that he was poor. That's it, right? So that much can go in for the lecturer. Now, if we come to point number 2, or we can say she argues that Chevalier had property which he had to sell, right? So the supporting detail comes in, and you can write clearly the lecturer and author maintain different views on this, but if you have already stated the different views, so these are the various alternative ways you can say it. And if you are talking about they are in agreement, then the lecturer and author are essentially agreement with each other. You can continue with that. Now, paragraph 3, you go on to the third point. Secondly, so the paragraph 3 is body paragraph 2, that is related to your second point. So you begin with secondly, the lecturer argues, contends, asserts, right? That, or you can say the author contends that, argues that. So we can use argues, contends, asserts in relation to the author or the critics in this case, and then move on. So you begin with the passage, that is easier, and then move on to the lecture, right? Each point begin with what the passage states, then move on to the lecture. So you can use, say you have 3 points, one of these words in each point. So the first point you can, if you say that the critics argue that, second point, the critics contend that, third point when you come to, critics assert that, right? So you bring about a variation. You don't use the critics state that in every paragraph. So instead of saying states, you can use 3 different words. Okay. So we can begin with the author contends that, yeah, what was it? That the Chevalier's memos regarding the accuracy of his memos regarding the conversation between Chevalier and Voltaire were not accurate, and then you give the reason why. Right? Why do the authors think so? Because it was the conversation took place many years before he actually wrote the memo. That's it. 1 sentence or 2 sentences. In fact, you can complete whatever the author has said in 1 sentence. Then you move on to the lecture. The lecture rebuts this argument, right? So if you have used disagrees in your introduction, you can use and you have used challenges in the first point, you can use rebuts in the second point, right? Again, So basically, you have to have 4 sets of words, right? So 4 sets of words relating to presenting a point or stating and challenging. So states, or we would rather say states. So the author states, the critic state, right? So 4 sets of words related to states, 4 sets of words related to challenges. Okay? So your introduction, first paragraph, your introduction, first point, second point, third point. 4 sets of words you have to keep in mind. So you fix yourself that first paragraph I use this, second paragraph I use this, third this, fourth this. Okay? So the lecturer rebuts this argument and suggests that, right? Or so you can begin with the lecturer rebuts the point about the accuracy of the conversation written down. She suggests that Chevalier wrote down the conversation, wrote down everything from the conversation just after it happened, right? And he referred to the notes when he wrote the memo. One sentence, right? And if you go into further details, then you have the people who were associated with him have confirmed this habit of his. Hence, the Chevalier's memos would have been, hence the account of the conversations would have been accurate. Right? That's it. About 3 sentences from the lecture you can get to. So you can say similarly, the lecture argues, contains, asserts, elaborates on this by mentioning that, right? Or you can say when the lecture thinks or believes that, whereas the author, so we don't go with that. So we can use, secondly, the author contends that, go into the details of what the author says. The lecturer rebuts this argument. She suggests that, right? And you complete your blanks. Okay, now coming to the third point again, you go into finally, right? So how you begin your first sentence of every paragraph with a transition is important. So that helps you to maintain the flow. Don't just begin with the author states that. Finally, the author states that, right? So whatever the author states, in this case, the critics state that Chevalier escaped from the prison in Venice by bribing the jailers instead of what he has written in his account of making a hole in the ceiling, right? So that point stated. So, or you can say the article establishes that if it is a different way the article has said. The lecture, on the other hand, posits that, yeah, or the lecture contains this point. On the contrary, you can say, on the contrary, the lecture argues that. This could be used. So finally, whatever the author has stated, and on the contrary, the lecturer argues that, you put forward the point made by the lecturer that other prisoners were more powerful than Chevalier, and if they could not bribe their way out of the prison. Yeah. So the question of Chevalier bribing his way out of the prison doesn't arise. Yeah. Then she gives, she further states that, right? She further mentions that there are reports, old reports, or you can say old prison reports or documents rather. She mentioned documents, so you use documents. Old documents as evidence that the ceiling was repaired after Chevalier escaped. So now if you see the, as you did in your speaking, you just use the key points, keywords that you have written down in your notes and write your sentences, right? So whatever details are there, you just use your keywords and create your sentences. So now if you think that you still want to put in a conclusion, you can just write, in conclusion, the lecturer and read and passage are both about the accuracy of Chevalier's memoirs. The professor effectively challenges the claims made in the article. Finished. Yeah, that's all you did. So this is the format and the, say, more or less template that you will be using. And your essay has to be concise. It has to state specifically, okay, another thing that has to be kept in mind, like you just don't say that this happened and that happened. You have to be very specific about where that point came from. Was it from the lecture? Was it from the passage? Right? So always tell the reader where your information is coming from. So you don't just summarize the points and present, but this is what the author says, this is what the lecturer says. Yeah. And each paragraph will begin with a transition. So the presenting a point and challenging a point, you will use different sets of words in different paragraphs. That is very important, right? So the grader should know from where each point is coming, right? Okay, some variety, like you can say, now don't use according to the passage or according to the lecture in each paragraph, right? So according to the lecture, the reading states that the reading made the point that, or the author made the point that, right? So you can use reading in one, the passage in one paragraph and the author in another paragraph, right? So that is how you would avoid redundancy. Okay, now when you are presenting the information, that is also important. When you're presenting information which is like examples, you can use for instance. As an example, the author or the lecturer mentions, in addition, so in addition to a point, the lecturer says something more. So like in the last point here, the lecturer said that other prisoners were more powerful. And then she says that there was evidence from old documents. In addition, she mentions evidence from old documents. You can say that way. Okay. Okay. Now coming to the transitions or the words. Now, when it is a disagreement, then the different words you can use is objects to the points, right? A speaker objects to the assertion by the author in the reading passage, disagrees with the claims of the author or with the author's claims, contradicts, right? The lecturer contradicts. According to the author, business can succeed if they follow three basic principles. The speaker in the lecture, however, contradicts each principle. So this could be an introduction. Yeah. So when you say contradicts each principle, means you are talking about the introduction. Now, you can say the speaker believes that the author's assertions are invalid, yeah, or the author's assertion that the motivation should always come from within is invalid. So this could be one of them. or it could be like challenge. These arguments one by one are challenged by the speaker in the listening passage. This is also related to introduction, right? Absurd, if you can't think of, if you run out of words, you can use absurd or ridiculous, but that is more an informal way of stating. We usually don't use it. So the speaker believes that the author's claim that bears are more likely to attack human when bears lose their fear is unfounded. And you can use unfounded. Yeah. So, or it could be like something is not to be taken seriously, right? Even though the author argues that bloggers lack the experience to write professionally, the speaker does not take this claim seriously, right? So it depends upon the situation, but mostly if you just, and if you're talking about something like some hypothesis or a scientific paper, then has no scientific basis. You can use these type of terms, right? So there's various ways of expressing yourself. Disputes, the author claims that however, the speaker disputes this claim by providing two reasons. So these are the different ways you can use. So now we went into various, say, alternate ways of saying things. Now let's look at a general template, which will help you. You can follow a general template and you have to just fill in the blanks. So the article introduces the topic of whatever the topic is. More specifically, the writer discusses whatever the stance of the author in the topic is, right? So you mention the topic and then you go into a little of detail. The lecture in the listening passage, or you can even remove the listening passage, it reduces word. So when you are writing, remember, you have to keep track of your word count. So all extra words that you use, avoid. The lecturer disagrees with this stance. He believes that whatever the professor is saying and attacks each of the claims made in the reading, yeah, or made in the passage. So this is how you introduce. Now you come to the first point. It could be something like, in the reading, the author begins by stating that, yeah, the lecturer, however, disagrees. Yeah. Now here, if you have used disagrees in the first paragraph, I wouldn't use disagrees here. However, refutes the statement. He states that, so we can use refutes over here. He goes on to say that any additional detail can come in, right? Then finally, the author also claims that, right? The second point, the author also claims that, or secondly, the author claims that, again, the lecturer believes there are flaws in the writer's argument. So it shows contrast. So whatever, when you are bringing in the point of the lecturer, it should show contrast. Yeah. The speaker holds that instead of believes that, holds that. So two sentences about what the professor's counter argument is. So whatever the details go in here. Then another reason, or finally the author feels that, another reason why the author feels that whatever the author was saying is that the professor is doubtful that this is accurate, right? He suggests that, and you go on to the third argument of the author. So this is more or less what your essay will look like, right? And this is what TOEFL is expecting. So your structure and template is something like that, and your details will come in, right? So 50% of your essay is the structure. Rest 50% is the details. Yeah. Okay. So, and if you want a conclusion, to sum up, both the writer and professor hold conflicting views about the topic. It is clear that they have trouble finding common ground on this issue. You can add, if you have, say, Maybe you have already written just 200 words. 25 words you can use for a conclusion. So by the time you come to the end of your essay, okay, another thing, you can edit your essay. Maybe a point you think that the first paragraph should be different. So you can go back, edit it. That you can do. It's not like that you can't delete something and rewrite. You can do that. So this is clear now, how to go about it. Okay. Now you have 20 minutes to plan and write. Yeah. Now before this 20 minutes, you have already taken notes from the passage. You have taken notes from the lecture, right? If you have missed out anything from the passage will appear again and you will get your points. Okay. Now, how to use this 20 minutes? About 2 minutes, you just look at your notes and figure out what goes into which paragraph. Yeah. Now, the template is in your mind. You know how to begin each paragraph. You have practiced enough that your template you remember, right? So, 2 minutes to write your introduction. Introduction will be short, about 2 to 3 lines maximum, 2 to 3 sentences. And sentences will not be very long. So try to break your sentences so that you don't run into too long compound sentences. Keep them short and simple. And say about 10, say the next about 10 minutes for the body paragraphs, right? Two body paragraphs or 3 body paragraphs, whatever is required. About 2 minutes if you want to write a conclusion, which is not always necessary, but you may put in it. Okay, now editing your essay, revise, going into, after you finish, don't just submit. There could be some glaring mistakes which you have missed out on. So always have 2 to 3 minutes to read through and edit. Yeah. So there will invariably be some typos, right? There will invariably be somewhere, maybe after the full stop, you don't have a capital letter coming in. Yeah. So those are the things you have to take care of. Spellings, especially spellings of words that have appeared in the passage and spellings of common words, right? And maybe you want to change the introduction of a particular paragraph or a particular word here and there. Maybe you think that you remembered that, okay, this was a detail which I haven't mentioned, a specific term that was there which you haven't mentioned. So you need to have enough time for that. So 2 to 3 minutes at the end, you should have to edit your essay. So your writing time will be basically, out of the 20 minutes, about 15 minutes maximum is your writing time, right? 5 minutes will be like 2 minutes for planning in the beginning, 3 minutes for editing at the end. Okay. So this is what your writing task 1 is all about. So now we have, okay, now when you are dealing with the passage, you can skip the introduction, that is the instructions given to you. You know what you have to do. You have to read a passage. The passage is so many words. You will get how much time to read the passage. You know you get 3 minutes and the timer is there, and that is how fast you have to read. While the lecture is going on, you have to take notes, they will tell you. And then they will tell you what the lecture will be about. And then the question will come up. Yeah. So far you have to just only focus on the question. Now, if the lecture is, say, disagreeing with the points in the passage, then you know what the question is going to be about. And you know exactly how to go about your writing task. So the clock will, now your timer will be there, 20-minute timer will be there for your writing. And keep an eye on the timer so you don't miss out on revising your essay at the end. Okay. So these are the instructions that will appear. Whole page of instructions will appear, like writing section measures your ability to use writing to communicate in academic environment. You will read a passage, listen to a lecture, you will then respond. All these things will come up. And they will also tell you, the question does not ask you to express your personal opinion. The warning is given again. And the word count is also, they remind you of how many words you have to write and how your response will be judged, right? So now your task is to be ready with your notes taking format. So and when you are making your table, use the entire page and leave enough space for each point so you can get down your details, right? So now if this we have dealt with, right? And
Yeah.
so this was your question. So I have just put down a summary of the points of both sides, right? Now what you are going to do is, this is what you will do for homework. You will write an essay on this. Yeah, you will write your response, and you write your response on a Word document and send it to me, right? So your template is there. Now when you are writing, make sure you think about the words, like get to a set of words that you are going to use. Make a list of words, about 5 words for presenting a point, 5 words for refuting a point, 5 words for giving examples, right? So each paragraph, your vocabulary is changing. So your sentence structure will change. So this is how your essay structure will be. Introduction, body paragraph 1 will be your, say, first point, second point, third point, conclusion, if you want to, right? Your template is also here. So you can begin with the reading and lecture are both about whatever. The author of the article argues that, the lecture disputes the claims mentioned in the article. His or her position is that, right? And then you go on to, firstly, according to the reading or the author, the article mentions that this argument is challenged by the lecturer. So challenged, disputes, and he claims that, additionally he points out that. So how many sentences per paragraph? About 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maximum 5 sentences. Yeah. If you think that you are going beyond 5 sentences, means you are using too many details which are not required. Okay. And then you go on to, like, secondly, the author suggests that, right? The critic suggests that, the lecturer, however, asserts that. So your transition words are clear. Finally, the author puts forth the idea that, the author contends that, in contrast, the lecturer's stance is, right? And he says that, or he mentions that. So now this is a more, say, concise format that is there. You can use this format as it is and write your essay. Okay? Okay. So this is a sample that is there. So you want to read this?
Sure, mom.
Okay. So it will be better if you read it so you will understand better. Yes, go on.
The reading and the listening are about the memoirs of the Chevalier de Saint-Galt, who was a very controversial figure. The author of the reading feels that his memoir is not historically accurate. The professor, on the other hand, thinks that the memoir is a reliable record. He casts doubt on each of the ideas presented in the reading. First of all, the author points out that in the memoir, the Chevalier claims to be very wealthy. He says that recent evidence, however, suggests that the Chevalier needed to borrow a lot of money and therefore could not have been rich. The lecturer casts doubt on this claim. She observes that the Chevalier was rich, but since he did not have cash that he could spend right away, he had to borrow money. She states that he needed to borrow money while waiting for his assets to be converted into money he could actually use. Secondly, the author contends that the conversations recorded in the memoir may not be very precise. He notes that they occurred many years before the memoir was written, and, and that it would have been impossible for the Chevalier to remember them accurately. On the other hand, the lecturer notes that the Chevalier often recorded conversations in his journals immediately after they occurred. She contends that when he was writing his memoirs, he referred to his such diaries. Finally, the author states that the Chevalier's depiction of his escape from a famous prison in Venice cannot possibly be realistic. He points out that instead of escaping through a hole in the ceiling like the memoir says, he probably had a friend bribe one of the jailers. The professor, however, disputes this claim and notes that prisoners with even more powerful friends could not bribe their way out of the jail. She also says that shortly after the Chevalier's purported, purported escape, a hole in the ceiling had to be repaired, which indicates that he may have escaped in the way described in his memoir.
Okay. So now in this, you have taken note of the various transitions,
Yes, ma'am.
right? So if you see, the first paragraph begins with, I have in fact put them into different colors, so it stands out. So it begins with the reading and listening are about, right? The author of the reading feels that the memo is not historically accurate. On the other hand, thinks that and casts doubts. This is very important. This sentence you don't miss out on, right?
Yeah, ma'am.
And then it begins with, first of all, the point of author points out, he says. So it begins with the simpler terms. And then the lecturer casts out. And if you see, the all details are not given, but all important points are included.
Yes.
Right?
Main address.
So the main points have to be there.
Okay.
Say she observed that the Chevalier was rich, but since he did not have cash that he could spend right away, he had to borrow. She said he needed to borrow while waiting for his assets to be converted into money, right? So states that. Now here in the previous sentence, previous paragraph, it was observes that, casts doubt, states that, right? Now if you come to the next paragraph, the author contends that instead of author says, he notes that, yeah. On the other hand, the lecturer notes that and she contends that, right? So, and finally, the author states that, it could be the author contends that or the author points out that. No, it is there. He points out that. And the professor, however, disputes this claim and knows that prisoners were even more powerful. So you don't repeat everything. Now, if you look at the point from the passage, Chevalier depicts his escape from a famous prison in Venice cannot possibly be realistic. He points out that instead of escaping through a hole, the memo says he probably had a friend bribe one of the jailers. Right? Now, this will not be repeated. You don't need to repeat that point when you're talking about the professor, what the professor says. Yeah. Prisoners with even more powerful friends could not bribe. So she does not, you don't repeat that. He did not, he did go escape through the hole, right? So just the evidence has to be stated, right? So when you are writing, remember, too much of repetition now, both of them are talking about the same point. So there is a little, like you may tend to repeat the point. So be careful that you have mentioned the point with the author. So you don't repeat the same point. You instead go into the point that refutes or disputes the point that the author has made. Okay. So this is how your essay will look like. And now what will the raters look for? What are the raters going to, the examiners are going to look for what?
The 4 criterion: language use, organization,
Right. So here, what are they looking for? How did you
transition.
begin? The transitions. Were you clear about what the topic was and what the relationship between the two were? Right? The points from the passage, points from the lecture, and the transitions between them. Right? Variation of sentence structure. That's what they're looking for. So all these things which are in different colors highlighted, she observed that. Then the accuracy of the points and how concise they are, and overall the word count also. Yeah. So if you go above, say you have written 230 words, they will note that you have gone 5 words beyond. So instead of 225 going into 230 is still okay. But if you see that you have already gone into 222, avoid a conclusion, right? So in this one, if you see, there is no conclusion, which is because according to TOEFL, conclusion is not required. Okay, so do we still have time? We have just 10 minutes, yeah? So we will just go through another set of passage, and you can try this for homework also. Okay, so this is the passage. It's about, in an effort to encourage ecologically sustainable forestry practices, an international organization started issuing certifications to wood companies that meet high ecological standards by conserving resources and recycling material. Yeah. Companies that receive this certification can attract customers by advertising their products as eco-certified. Around the world, many wood companies have adopted new ecologically friendly practices in order to receive eco-certification. However, it is unlikely that wood companies in the United States will do the same for several reasons. So from the introduction itself, what do we get?
It's a disagreement
Not
text.
disagreement. So this is the passage. Passage is dealing with a particular side of the topic.
Yeah, so
right?
like it's talking
So
about the fact that it might
the
not happen.
topic is about introduction of eco-certification. Yeah, but the wood companies in United States, according to the author, wood companies in United States would not go for eco-certified wood for several reasons. So the reasons will come up now. Okay, first, American consumers are exposed to so much advertising that they would not value or even pay attention to eco-certification label. So this is talking about consumers being exposed to advertising. Because so many mediocre products are labeled new or improved, American consumers do not place much trust in advertising claims in general. So the main point here is consumers do not trust advertising claims because there are many products which are new and improved, and they would not pay attention to eco certification label. Yeah, that is the main point. Okay. Do you want to read the second and third paragraphs?
Sure, ma'am. Second, eco-certified wood will be more expensive than uncertified wood because in order to earn eco-certification, a wood company must pay to have its business examined by a certification agency. This additional cost gets passed on to consumers. American consumers tend to be strongly motivated by price, and therefore they are likely to choose cheaper uncertified wood products. Accordingly, American wood companies would prefer to keep their prices low rather than obtain eco-certification. Third, although some people claim that it always makes good business sense for American companies to keep up with the developments in the rest of the world, this argument is not convincing. Pursuing certification would make sense for American wood companies only if they marketed most of their products abroad. But that is not the case. American wood businesses sell most of their products in the United States, catering to a very large customer base that is satisfied with the merchandise.
Yeah. So there were three distinct points then,
Yes.
right? So the first point made was related to the advertising, and people will not go for eco certification label. Second point was about the pricing. And third point was about the market that the wood companies sell in. So the wood companies usually sell in the United States only, and they are not really catering to the customers abroad, right? So now we will take notes on the lecture. I'll play the lecture.
Well, despite what many people say, there's good reason to think that many American wood companies will eventually seek eco certification for their wood products. First off, consumers in the United States don't treat all advertising the same. They distinguish between advertising claims that companies make about their own products and claims made by independent certification agencies. Americans have a lot of confidence in independent consumer agencies. Thus, ecologically minded Americans are likely to react very favorably to wood products ecologically certified by an independent organization with an international reputation for trustworthiness. Second point, of course, it's true that American consumers care a lot about price. Who doesn't? But studies of how consumers make decisions show that price alone determines consumers' decisions only when the price of one competing product is much higher or lower than another. When the price difference between two products is small, say less than 5%, as is the case with certified wood, Americans often do choose on factors other than price. And Americans are becoming increasingly convinced of the value of preserving and protecting the environment. And third, U.S. wood companies should definitely pay attention to what's going on in the wood business internationally, not because of foreign consumers, but because of foreign competition. As I told you, there's a good chance that many American consumers will be interested in eco certified products. And guess what? If American companies are slow on capturing those customers, you can be sure that foreign companies will start crowding into the American market, offering eco certified wood that domestic companies don't.
Okay, so there were considerably more points here than the previous one, right? So, but if you just make it get to the main points, clearly there were extra details and specific points related to the passage. So, you are concerned with the specific points related to the passage. So, your question is summarize points made in the lecture, being sure to explain how they cast doubt on specific points made in the reading passage, right? So, you deal with this in the same way. So I have put down the points here and just see if you've got the points, or maybe you may have got more points than put down here also. So from the reading we get, because American consumers have come to distrust frequently used advertising claims, such new or improved, they don't pay attention or trust eco-certified label. Yeah, just to put it in concisely. And from the lecture we get, American consumers do pay attention to claims about products when those claims are made by independent consumer agencies. Yeah, that's what the whole thing was about. Now, from the reading we get, since eco-certification adds to the cost of a product, Americans would be unlikely to buy eco-certified products and would choose cheaper uncertified products. So that is the main point from the passage. You can go into details no, from the passage you don't need to go into details. Details are required from the lecture. This is true only if there is a big price difference between the two similar products. If an eco-certified product costs only about 5% more, American consumers would accept this in order to buy the product that is better for the environment. And here they spoke about if the price difference is less than 5%, then what will happen? So choose on factors can be included. Yeah. But the main point was about the pricing. And the third point was, because American companies sell their products mainly in the US, they don't need to compete in the rest of the world where eco-certification is desired by consumers. And from the lecture we get, American companies must be ready to or must pay attention to compete with foreign companies that will soon be selling eco-certified products in the US market. So because of the competition that is coming in, they have to go in for. Any other point that you have?
No, ma'am, my points are mostly the same. I've just
Yeah,
written like there's confidence, higher confidence in independent consumer agencies.
right,
And in the third one, if American companies are slow to capture the market, then they will be competing with foreign companies.
right. So you've got your points, and now you can convert this into an essay using the template. Not very difficult. It's a structured essay, so you don't have to think much. You just have to get the points, put them in, and you are done. Right? So you can write these two. And so there's also a sample essay of eco-certified this set. And you have a few, I think one or two more over here.
In your
One more. So yeah, so there are two more here. And you also have, okay, there's some videos given, which is exactly how it comes. So with the timer, everything will be there. You can practice from here, and you will get more material, more practice material from the links that I have shared that day.
Yes, ma'am.
Right?
Yeah.
So now you know exactly how to deal with this.
Yeah, ma'am.
So if you get time between today and tomorrow, I think you could do at least one. Yeah, the first one, maybe you can actually write and see how it is going. And then you can go on to one of them, which we haven't discussed. Okay. Any doubts so
No.
far? No? Everything clear?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, then I think our time is also up, right? Okay, then.
All right.
Right.
Good
And
night.
yeah, do share your speaking responses.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, keep sharing. And are you practicing the independent task?
Yes, ma'am. I'm practicing more of that since it's hard to get the integrated ones. Independent, I can get like
The
topic.
integrated one takes a little more time, but the independent one, Doesn't take much time. So you can do that every day, and
Yeah.
maybe alternate days you can do. Now you have even the other ones to, you have the writing, reading, and listening to practice,
Yes, ma'am.
right?
Yeah.
So maybe over the weekend, yeah, you have school and other classes also, but you still have to practice,
Yes, ma'am.
right? So if you practice even say more or less alternate days, you do something or the other, and you do a little of speaking every single day, you'll be done.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay then. Thank you and good night.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Good night.
Mm.